Hello and welcome to DIY Parties and our quick start guide for setting up our DIY disco package. We're going to start off by showing you how we'd suggest laying everything out. So we'd begin by putting the main rack with the mixer in the middle. Everything else gets plugged into this box, so it's best to place it centre. Either side of that, we'd then put the power bar lights on their stands, with the speakers on stands outside of those. The disco dome lights can then be spread out around the room, though we'd usually put a couple at the front with the rest of the setup. And if you've got a smoke machine, that's usually best to put centre as well. You can obviously move things around if it suits your space better, but this is how we tried to do it if we were there. So, now the layout's out of the way, onto the detail of the setup. The first job is to take the front lid off the main rack using the butterfly clips on either side. You can easily tell the front from the back because we've cable tied the back clips shut so you can't open them. For the front ones, you simply need to flip open the bracket and spin it anti-clockwise to release. Inside you'll find a number of cables. The first one, which comes out from the top of the rack, will plug into your phone, laptop or whatever device you're using to play the music. This next cable is one of the ones for the speakers, which you can identify because it's actually two separate cables taped together to save time and make the setup much easier for you. There's two of these cables in the pack, so we can skip over the second one for now. This next one is a power cable for the lighting bars. There's two of these included, and you can see the difference from the speaker cables as there's only a single wire on each one. The last one is the main power cable. This has a normal 13 amp plug, so you can plug into any socket within 10 meters of the setup. We'll start by plugging in this power cable, but you don't need to turn the switch on yet. You'll see that all of our cables have a Velcro cable tie on to keep them neatly secured in transit and save the need for tape. So this cable plugs into the far right hand socket next to the switch, and the other end can go into your power supply, ready to be switched on. Moving on to the speakers, you'll find the stands together in a protective bag. To set them up, you first need to loosen the thumb screw at the top of the legs, and then you can open the legs out so they're nicely spread like in this picture. You can then simply tighten that back up to secure it all in place. You then need to set the height of the stand. We'd suggest aiming for the speakers to be just above head height for the best results. You simply need to loosen this top thumb screw and then lift up the inner pole until it's at the right height. You can then put the safety pin through one of these holes and lower the stand back down so it's sitting on that pin, and then tighten everything up. You can then lift the speaker up and place it on top of the stand and tighten the thumb screw on the bottom to secure it. These then plug in with the cables that we took out of the main rack earlier. The power plugs in at the bottom, with the audio cable going into the top port labelled 1. Make sure you line up the pins correctly and don't force the cable in. You can always look for the little arrow and line that up with the metal button on the speaker. The other ends of these cables then go into the main rack, into the two ports on either end. The thinner stands are for the power bar lights, which go up in exactly the same way as the speaker stands. You can then simply slot the lights on the top and tighten the thumb screw. These just have a power cable, so you can simply plug this into any free port in the middle of the front of the rack. If you're using a smoke machine, this can also just plug into one of these ports. We also supply an adapter which you can use to plug in a laptop charger or similar, so you're not relying on battery power for your event. Now, with all of the main things connected, we can power up by flicking the main power switch. The controls on the mixer are really straightforward. You simply have a music volume dial to adjust the volume of your music, and a mic volume dial for the microphone volume. You can also tune the EQ of each of these slightly with the high and low dials, adjusting those frequencies, but for most applications you can simply leave this all pointing straight up. The top unit is the radio microphone receiver. We supply two microphones, which you'll find in the zipped up section of the lid, along with a couple of adapters that you might need. This has a separate volume dial for each microphone, but you can probably leave these pointing straight up and adjust the main mic volume dial below. The microphones are wireless, but we'd recommend staying close to the mixer when using them so you stay in range, and make sure you never stand in front of the speakers with a microphone on, as you'll probably get loud feedback, which is never nice for anyone. The microphones have a simple switch on the bottom to turn them on and off. We'll charge up the batteries before giving them to you, but would recommend turning them on and off as you need them, rather than leaving them switched on. They do take a few seconds after you switch them on before you'll hear anything, so just make sure to give them this time. You can plug in your music device to the 3.5mm mini jack headphone cable we looked at earlier, and there's also adapters for Lightning and USB-C devices in the zip section of the case lid if you don't have a headphone port. You can also pair via Bluetooth directly to the mixer. It usually shows up simply with the name Bluetooth. If you're plugged into the cable, you'll need to have the input dial spun to line 1, but if you're using Bluetooth, you'll need to select AUX, which is right at the bottom. You can also connect an SD card or USB memory stick and use the same aux selection, but we find the USB port to be much more useful for connecting a phone charger so that your phone doesn't run out of battery while playing music. At this point, it's worth checking that the speakers are on, and then you can play some music and set a starting volume. The top dial at the back of the speaker sets a master volume, which affects everything. We'd start at around -15, but you can adjust as required. For the power bar lights, they should turn on as soon as they have power, but you'll need to find a setting you like using the buttons on the back. Our favourite is AP08, which you can get to by pressing the up and down buttons. You can then point the lights to get a nice spread around your room. The disco domes can be placed around your venue and should also turn on as soon as they have power, but there's a switch on the back if not. Again, you might need to press some buttons to find a setting that you like. Our favourite is pressing menu to get to A4 and then up to get to 5 on the right hand side, which gives you a nice mix of colours. For the smoke machine, whenever the light on the remote is on, you can press the button for some smoke. Just make sure your venue is okay with the smoke before you use it, and make sure it's safe when you press the button. There's fluid in the back of the machine, so just be careful and don't tip it upside down or on too much of an angle. That's basically everything for the setup. For packing away, you simply have to reverse the steps and put everything back how you found it. Just remember to press in the metal buttons on the audio connectors to release them, and coil the cables nicely with the Velcro cable ties. For more detailed troubleshooting, you can find that in your printed guide, but we're sure you'll be fine and know that you're going to have a great party. So, over to you. Enjoy!